right, so you know we have a regulator in the real estate industry, and that's going to bring in more power to home buyers like you and me. But how will RERA impact our lives? What's going to change and how quickly is it going to change? Now, a lot of very different opinions. The industry argues that the new regulator will possibly cause an increase in prices of homes. The government argues that it's very, very pro-home buyer and pro-consumer. And of course, investors are happy about the transparency. So we're going to focus in the urban debate on a couple of things. Will prices of homes actually go up or come down because of the new regulator? Is it really pro-consumer? How does it put more power in your hands? And if it's good for investment, then does it make sense for you to begin investing in real estate as well? Well, here's the massive panel that we've put together just to help you out. Niranjan Hiranandani, co-founder, managing director at the Hiranandani Group. Ambar Maheshwari, CEO of private equity funds at India Bulls Asset Management. Jayesh Karya is a real estate tax expert. Ravi Ahuja, managing director, investment, sales and office agency, India Cushman Wakefield. Ramesh Prabhu is the chairman of the Maharashtra Societies Welfare Association. Shaina NC, national spokesperson of the BJP, will join us as well through the course of the show. We're also going to open up the phone line because the other member of this panel is you. Pick up the phone and call us if you have any questions about how the real estate regulator will change your life, or if you want to add something to this conversation and be part of it. Niranjan Hiranandani, I'm going to start with you. We had this conversation yesterday, just after the bill was passed. And my question is simply this. Will prices actually go up? Because from what we understand, developers are going to have to stop, register with the regulator, change the back end of the finances of the projects that are under construction, and start sales again. Will this lead to a hike in prices of property?
I think there are two aspects of it. First of all, you have to understand that if what the law is presently drafted says, it means that all the pending projects will have to go to the regulator if it has to have further sales from the date of the final notification that will take place. It is quite obvious that it will not only be with the central government, but each of the states will have to ratify it. While Maharashtra has its own bill, which has already been passed, and even presidential assent is given, now I believe that Maharashtra also will sign up on the basis of the regulatory law of the central government, which means that they will have to, say, scrap the law which has been already approved and then get the new law into place. Number two, the regulator will have to come into place, and also each person will have to file papers with the regulator according to what is required in terms of the transparency that we have talked about. I think a good 3 to 6 months minimum away from the time the regulator will come into force, the earliest possible time.
You didn't answer my specific question. Do you believe all of that delay will actually lead to, even marginally so, a hike in prices of property when you have to work in that escrow of 70%? And to quickly explain to our viewers who don't understand what that means, it basically means that 70% of everything a developer collects as sale for a particular building has to be used for that building, cannot be diverted to anything else. So construction that's already begun, the back-end finances of it will have to be reworked. Mr. Hiranandani, will that increase prices?
The interest cost which will add up because of the additional amounts which will be kept escrowed and borrowing will have to take place. I think on an average flat of about 5,000 rupees a foot, the increase in cost could be anything between 50 to 100 rupees a foot on the additional interest cost that will come up in the period of keeping this amount in escrow and further amount to be borrowed for this purpose. I'm talking about the arbitrage of the interest that would be there, presuming, of course, that the deposits will collect the interest, and also presuming that the developer has the capacity to be able to borrow more money while keeping this amount in escrow. I think about 50 to 100 rupees a foot could be an escalation in cost that could take place.
Ravi Ahuja, 50 to 100 rupees a square foot will make anybody watching this show right now very concerned, because the concern already is that the prices are too high and they're out of reach. How long, Mr. Hiranandani brought up this point where he said 3 to 6 months, but let's be honest about the fact that not all states will jump at it, like possibly Maharashtra might be one of the first to do it, but the other states will take a little longer to get used to the idea. You have to set up the regulator, choose a chairman, offices need to be found, appellate tribunals need to be created, judges need to be staffed, things like that. Are we looking at least a year or two before every state has their regulators?
So in some states, I would agree with Mr. Hiranandani
that probably 6 months or so. But some other states which are not prepared and which have not gone any past the route, which let's say Maharashtra has already achieved, but even there we hear that they will have to scrap and restart. So 6 to 12 months probably is not a bad start. But let me just take a step back, Faye, and convey my compliments, because this is a tipping point in our industry, and we've been all waiting for this regulator to be in force. So first of all, it's good news for the home buyer and also brings in transparency and accountability. Now, coming back to certain things of time frame, 6 to 12 months is not big, especially when we waited for 3 to 4 years for seeing this light of the day. So in my mind, it's just perfect, and we can prepare ourselves. On the raising of the prices, if I may be allowed to comment,
right.
I think there is going to be a short-term liquidity crunch, and that means some of the developers, particularly in cities like Mumbai, where land costs are 70 to 80% of the project cost in certain cases. I think there, developers may not be able to probably acquire newer projects in time. Some of the launches may get delayed, but then that's just the high-value projects in Mumbai, I must say.
All right, just in Mumbai, you don't see the same thing happening, say, in a Bangalore, a Pune, an NCR region where a liquidity crunch is already happening. There's, that would be an understatement, in fact, for the NCR.
Sure. So there will be, but like Mr. Hiranandani said, I again agree with him that it's going to be some arrangement at the back-end finance, which will take up the cost by 50 to 100 rupees.
Jayesh Karya, in your opinion, when we've looked at regulators being set up in the past, and we've had these situations before in the country, there might be room here to maybe speak to the government and say, for the first time when people are registering buildings that are already under construction, there shouldn't be a case there to stop sales until after it's done, because you could just register and continue sales. Bringing the industry across the country to a grinding halt might not make sense at all at this point, would it?
I fully agree with you and what Niranjan Bhai said, that obviously there is no point. As Ravi said, that yes, it's a kind of, I would say, welcome move on part of the government, and I would say it's a moment of celebration. But at the same time, that celebration should not, I think, get converted into a kind of a challenge, both for the buyers and for the developers. So therefore, you rightly mentioned that that I would say the new provision should not put the kind of whole machinery to grind, and that I think will have a lot of ramifications in terms of the delaying the project, in terms of the cost escalations, in terms of, I would say, the developers itself finding, I would say, avenues to fund, because then if their money gets stuck into the, I would say, the whole escrow account mechanism, then I think they will have to find out alternate mechanism that how do the fund kind of the existing projects and also new the project kind of.
All right, so first impact that we're taking away from this conversation is the fact that developers believe, and a large portion of the industry agrees with them, that if sales were to be brought to a grinding halt across the country for everyone to register with the regulator, then we might see prices actually going up, which might not be in the favor of the spirit of this regulation. That's something that we'll take to the government. Ambar Maheshwari, let's focus on investment. Obviously, this brings in a lot of transparency. This also helps us from a buyer point of view to be able to tell the difference between good developers and developers that are not worth our money. This is obviously the same for you as an investor. How excited are you about the fact that this information will be available at the touch of a button?
Oh, very excited, Faye. I think, as everybody has, there is a consensus around it that this is a path-breaking initiative that the government has actually implemented. And, will bring in a lot of transparency, will bring in a lot of accountability for the developers. The first time around, a developer would be accountable to a singular body.
Yes.
Until now there were a variety of bodies, variety of civil courts and consumer courts and so forth. So it used to get lost in the mishmash somewhere. But I think now with this regulator being in play, the developers become accountable. Large ones already are, a lot of them. But, increasingly now with the industry, the way it's growing and keeping in mind the growth that we're seeing in the country as well, I think this is a very, very positive impact.
That's correct. I fully agree with you. Today, because there is an escrow account where the money will be put into that escrow account, that doesn't mean it cannot be taken out. It has to be exclusively used for that project. When you are using it for that project, naturally, the turnaround time, which otherwise would have taken 3 to 4 years to complete the project because the funds are getting diverted somewhere, today that fund will be exclusively used for that project. Project will get turned around and more production will start, and that money, what is profitable, 30%, that can be put in another project.
I want to bring in Niranjan Hiranandani here. We do know, and I'm going to be completely honest about what I hear from the industry here, Mr. Hiranandani. From all across the country, I've heard stories, horror stories, of local corporators who hold back OCs and demand settlements or cash payments in return. Now, here's a window for more extortion if, on one hand, the developer has to be worried about the new regulator. On the other hand, there's nobody regulating the corporators and the local bodies that hand out these OCs. So it's fully within, right now, their rights to hold up those OCs and cause even more trouble for developers. Is that something that concerns you? Do you think we might actually see more of that? Because there are enough buildings right now without OCs.
That's exactly what I mentioned earlier, and that is exactly the case that has happened in the case of Thane, where somebody even committed suicide because he was held up for extortion. So I think that case is, of course, sub judice and pending in the courts. But what is really happening, and it's not only in the case of the corporators, it could be officers of the government, it could be various people and departments and politicians who are intervening besides corporators. And this is happening quite commonly across the country. And I think it's known to one and all. So there is a problem that is likely to have, and that is the exact reason why it was suggested by industry that the regulator should also have control for the purposes of giving directions to various government authorities in case that occupation certificate has to be given, permissions are not being given, certain things are held back, unnecessarily hold back of occupation or other permissions to be done. So we were requesting that the regulator should also be able to give such directions as are necessary for the purposes of giving occupation certificates, etc.
I'm going to take another very quick break. When we come back, Shaina NC, a spokesperson of the BJP, is going to join us on the show, and we'll talk more about this big move that's come in from Delhi, a brand new real estate regulator, and what it means for all of us as home buyers. That's on the other side. Don't go anywhere. It is a big week for home buyers. It's a big week on this channel. We finally have a real estate regulator. Joining me on the show with the rest of my panel right now, Shaina NC, spokesperson of the BJP. Shaina, welcome to the show. First of all, allow me on behalf of home buyers across the country to congratulate the government and to appreciate the work that's being done. We greatly appreciate the manner in which this was handled with the standing committee, with all of the voices that were heard and were taken into consideration, and even the conversation that happened at the Rajya Sabha yesterday, which put the home buyer and the customer first. We've been getting phone calls over the last 24 hours from across the country from home buyers who are extremely grateful. Obviously now my question to you is this: the big step. I mean, yesterday was the end of one big fight, and it's now the beginning of a new one, where every state is going to have to come forward and set up a regulator in the spirit of the regulation bill that's been passed by Parliament. How much headway has the government made already? How confident are you of making this happen over the next, say, 6 months to a year?
I'm very, very confident, because I think that the groundwork and the outline has already been laid in Parliament. I think that if one really analyzes the 10 points which are the highlights, one is that the document must be registered. Second is that there will be no discrimination on base of caste, creed, sex, gender, etc. I think this is a huge takeaway, and it is, at least in a city like Mumbai, it is a step in the positive direction. We all know of cases where builders have ostracized or been negative on particular cases, particular people who belong to a particular community, or for that matter, even a particular trade of business, etc. We know that what you just highlighted before the break, so I'm not going to repeat the same, but I think that it's imperative to know that in 60 days you can have your case absolutely solved rather than going to the consumer court. All of this is an outline in itself, so I don't think that the states need to work too much on it. We just need to have a body in place that is a competent authority, and I can only speak for the state of Maharashtra that 100% it will be in the positive direction, with even the inputs from people of the builder community as well.
In fact, that's a massive point, Niranjan Hiranandani. I'm going to bring that to you. The amendment that was added, the clause that was added on discrimination, which was a suggestion made by one of the members of the opposition, immediately worked into the bill again, I think, in an extremely proactive manner, where as it stands now, no developer, no building, no society can reject any sort of home buyer based on their religion, on their caste, on their creed, on their sexual orientation, on any sort of those, characteristics. And I think that's massive, because even while nobody talks about it on public forums, it's something that happens in all of our cities, and it causes a great deal of distress.
It's a very important point.
For people of minority communities.
Yes.
Huge point, and we must acknowledge it. Niranjan Hiranandani.
I just want to make a limited point before Mr. Hiranandani comes in. One is that, everyone talks about an inclusive society and how we can have it. We've had cases where we've had single mothers who have been victimized. We've had people who have been homosexuals who have talked about not being allowed to be a part of a community or a building or a condominium. I think this is really a step in the right direction, and a very positive step, even if I'm saying it myself, for our own government, because I think that, any kind of discrimination in the field of home buying has always been treated not really as a priority, but we have highlighted this as the second most important point in the bill.
All right, Niranjan Hiranandani, come in here. I am going to wholeheartedly agree with China that this is a massively important point for everybody across the country. Not only do you know that you're no longer allowed to be discriminated against on any ground, you'll have an appellate tribunal that will settle that dispute in less than 60 days if it does happen. So it's no longer a question of, they're not allowing me to live in this building, who can I go to? You know who you can go to. Niranjan Hiranandani, I'm going to bring you back in here. Anti-discrimination, big step.
I think it's fantastic. It's an absolutely essential point in this kind of country that we live in a democratic state, and the kind of secularism that we need to bring to the table. Very good law, and I think it's wonderful. I hope the regulator does bring it down and hammers down the issue very, very strongly. Hats off to the BJP in this. And the second point, which Ms. Shaina raised, I think is also equally important. That is that the states have to make good preparation for the purposes of bringing into enforcement this law.
Shaina, before I let you go and we have to wrap up the show, I have one very quick question for you. In our conversation with the Housing Secretary, she mentioned that the government is working on a plan across the country for single window clearances of all sorts to be handed out on construction in 26 days or less. Can you give us a status on what that is, where that is right now with the rest of the country, and also the affordable housing plans of PPPs that she talked about, where she said that developers will be allowed to develop on state land, provided 35% of that construction is meant for economic weaker sections of society. Give us a status on where the government is on both of these projects.
Well, as you know, the only need of the hour really is low-cost housing and affordable housing. And we've talked about lots of private-public partnerships, etc. And we have said, and this has been deliberated time and again by not just the Housing Secretary, but even experts from your community that have advised our government, of which I'm sure Mr. Niranjan Hiranandani has also been a part of, where we have had suggestions by the developers saying that we will, ensure that X amount of the land is kept aside, can be utilized for public utility or for low-cost housing or for other needs that the government have vis-a-vis infrastructure, etc. But we will give you such expedited clearances that you won't have to go from window to window and person to person and play the old rules of the games, which is underhand dealing. That is all done away with, and I think that's a thing of the past. I only hope that in spirit, the kind of lacunas that existed in the system, which needed to be done away with, when our government is working to do away with that, and namely corruption and namely red tapeism, I hope that the builder community and the developers also will cooperate with us and work in this speedy vision plan of the Prime Minister and the Chief Minister.
All right, eradicating corruption from the system is top of the list, and that's something that needs to be done. I have a few minutes, and I'm going to quickly squeeze in two answers from Ambar Maheshwari and Ravi Ahuja. You both said transparency will lead to a better environment for investment. Does this mean that average investors like myself, who look at the real estate industry as an asset class, should now come back into this market and begin investing and banish thoughts of possibly never getting delivery? Ambar Maheshwari?
Absolutely. A big yes.
Where would you invest the money? If I gave you 50 lakh rupees today and say invest it in the real estate sector, where would you invest that money?
So, look, it's a very, very micro-market driven thing. As we've already talked about, there needs to be a lot of diligence that needs to be done.
Give me your favorite market.
My favorite market is Bangalore.
Your favorite market is Bangalore,
yes.
All right. So Ambar Maheshwari would begin investing in Bangalore. Ravi Ahuja, same question to you. Is it the right market to begin buying homes, to begin investing in this market again? Should we get our confidence back as buyers and as investors?
I think yes. And also, to add to that, there will be new set of buyers given these who've just been away. So not that the old ones have stopped coming. Yes, they will come back. But a new set of buyers given the transparency and accountability, particularly the foreign buyers, the NRI community, etc., will come back and give it a thumbs up.
That's correct.
And as far as the markets are concerned, I'm a fan of Mumbai, but with 50 lakhs, I would rather stick to Bangalore, which has huge IT, demand, and residential will definitely have a trickling effect over longer term.
All right, if I were to give you a larger budget, and I know that Mumbai has some fantastic infrastructure that's in the pipeline that will obviously completely change the market completely. Would you then look at Mumbai, and where in Mumbai would you invest that money?
Yeah, I guess Mumbai, if you have a 5 to 7 year view, I would still go to the western suburbs. Or if you have a 10-year view, it would clearly be Navi Mumbai, which will gain out of two major infrastructure projects, the MTHL, Mumbai Trans-Harbour Link, and the International Airport.
All right, so obviously Navi Mumbai is a massive, remember we're talking, and this is something that we brought to you on the channel as well, as it when it happens. We'll have a new airport. Of course, in the rail budget, we heard massive announcements for the city of Mumbai in terms of train connectivity, the Trans-Harbour Link Road, and of course, the coastal road, from what we understand, might now extend all the way to Thane and to Ghodbunder Road. They're opening up the entire city, making it possibly circular for the first time. Jayesh Karya, quickly, final comments. Is it now a buyer's market? Is it now a safe market for buyers?
I would say it is a buyer's market. I clearly agree, given the kind of sluggishness and given the kind of the discounts and all the schemes are being offered. So clearly it's a buyer's market. Now coming back to, I would say, safe environment. Yes, clearly the transparency, the accountability, the quality of the delivery, the regulator playing a kind of active role, I think it's going to be a safe market. But what is to be, I think, looked at is the implementation.
All right. I have to wrap up the show, but Shaina, I want to thank you for the conversations we've had on this channel, the fact that you've been open to dialogue from all parts of the industry, from developers, from analysts, from consumers. You've been patient and you've listened and you've taken those ideas to the government. I only ask that we continue this conversation because it's going to be a new phase for this industry, that we continue a conversation and dialogue between industry and home buyers who watch this channel, who can bring you their, their suggestions.
Your channel is very important to air that.
Thank you, Shaina. And of course,
you need to communicate it. Thank you.
All of our panelists, thank you so much for joining us. It is a brave new world for Indian real estate, for the sector, for the people that work in it, and for us as home buyers. You can get in touch with us if you have any questions about the regulator or about anything to do with buying homes. That's what we're here for, and we're going to stay here to help you after this break. Don't go anywhere. Thank you for watching The Urban Debate.